We are here. What's up? We are here. It is at 2 p.m. This is it. This is it. It's running. We're going. Here we are. We are live. Had a little trouble connecting, but we are here. So we are good. We are here. We are starting. Let's do this. Let's talk about sidekicks. Who wants to talk about sidekicks? I do. I do. So we're going to talk about sidekicks today. One of my favorite topics in terms of filmmaking. I have to say, hello, Tara. I never know if it's Tara or Tara. I always, every time I say your name, I say that. Hello, Tara. Some of you may have been to our story event already, where we really broke down an entire story, really like showing how Shrek and The Matrix, they're the same movie. But today we're going to focus primarily on the two sidekicks. We're going to, Tara, is that right? Tara. So I'm looking forward to this too. I know we talked about it once before, Rick. So I'm really looking forward to this. Well, I've talked about it many times. So we're going to dive right in talking about sidekicks, the two sidekicks that I think, well, there are many sidekicks, and I'm going to touch on other sidekicks today as well. But these two in particular are spectacular. They're spectacular sidekicks. And so I want to dive in and talk about them because I think that they really do tell you, they really do hit all the marks of what a sidekick is supposed to do. And so as a reader, so if you're just getting to know us, although I'm recognizing most of the names here, I'm Carolyn J. Carpenter, founder of Hollywood Gatekeepers, where we train people how to read and analyze screenplays. So we dive in. If you're a writer, this is a great place to be. Being a writer and learning how to analyze a screenplay from a reader's perspective is really important, because no matter where you're sending your script, whether it's agents, lawyers, managers, producers, whatever it might be, it will get seen by a reader. A reader is typically the very first person that sees that script. So we always are coming from that reader's perspective. So let's dive right in, shall we? So I'm going to share my screen. We do have a handout today, and towards the end, I will give you the link so that you can keep it as soon as I find my mouse here. There we go. So I am going to share my screen, she says with confidence. Present. Share screen. There we go. So it's been a while since I've used this platform. Sidekicks. Here we go. Let's do it. So I want to make sure I can still see your comments. Well, I'm glad you're here, Andrew. So happy to have you here. So happy to have all y'all here. So can you see that? Sidekicks. Yay, spectacular sidekicks. So I think I have to control it from over here, though. Hold on. Make sure I can make it so you can see it. So we did a whole story event, like I said, where we compared Shrek and The Matrix and really walked through all the elements of story and how these two stories are so similar. And I just love that because they're very different. Obviously, they're different for obvious reasons, right? But they're also very, very similar. And so one of the reasons I think that they are similar is because they are so structurally sound. And so a film that is structurally sound really hits all the markings of, what should happen when. Shrek was happened to be written by readers. They started out as readers, and then they went on to write many, many movies, the Shrek series being one of them, and Pirates of the Caribbean being another. And so I have a special place in my heart for it because they really are demonstrating, what a reader writes, right? So let's dive in and let me show you why I think that Morpheus and Donkey are so very similar, even though they're obviously, Morpheus is quintessentially one of the coolest characters ever written, and Donkey is one of the goofiest, sweetest characters ever written. So they're on the not opposite, but they're on very wide stream of characters when you look at them at face value. But when you look at their relationship to Neo and Shrek, then you'll start to see what I'm talking about. So let's dive in and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So first I want to kind of go through supporting characters in general. So when you have a screenplay, there's a myriad of different kinds of supporting characters to choose from. All of the supporting characters can do the things that these two supporting characters do. And we're going to give more examples of that to begin with. But there's the hero these are the types of characters. And so the hero is not a supporting character, but these are all the types of characters. And then we're going to go into what the supporting characters are. So you've got your hero, you have a sidekick, which is what we're going to talk about today. villains, you have an obstacle as opposed to you got antagonist, villain, and obstacle. Those are the things that keep the protagonist down, so to speak. So, for example, the wizard is not the villain. Clearly, the Wicked Witch is the villain, right? But the wizard is a very strong obstacle, keeps her from going home, forces her to get the broom, does all kinds of things with the protagonist, right? And then you have buddy films where there's two, sometimes it can be more one person story than the other, but the two characters are very, they share a lot of screen time. And that also includes, we don't have romantic comedies on here. It's a little bit of a different genre in terms of, because they're not really sidekicks. Buddy films, one of them tends to be more of a sidekick. Sometimes they can be pretty equal, but typically it's one person's story and the other person is more of a sidekick. Then you've got your cameos. Cameos and bit parts are similar. The difference is that a cameo is typically a recognizable person. So Keanu Reeves has made some pretty famous cameos. William Shatner makes cameos all the time. So characters that just come on for a little bit. Bit parts are the same way, where you just have a couple of lines, but the difference in a cameo and a bit part is that, again, we recognize that person as the cameo. And then you've got chorus and extras, and those are a little bit different. All the zombies that are extras, but sometimes you'll have what I call a chorus of people. And this isn't chorus in terms of screenplay writing. You don't see this term very often, but I like to think of it as supporting characters, because you might have a chorus of people. So it's like all of the crew on the pirate ship, right? They all have lots of things they say. We kind of get to know all the different ones, the one with the weird eye that comes out, the grumpy, his buddy, we can see them as a duo together, but they're within all of the ones, all of the crew members. So sometimes a sports team will have that. Well, you'll know like all the different players, but they all together, they create a voice, right? So that's your chorus. They are giving you the underscoring of the messaging. They provide humor. They like really support the story. They're very entertaining typically. And so they will really support the story as well as a kind of chorus of voices. Whereas extras, they might have a line here and there, but they're basically background. So sometimes a group of reporters might be a chorus of people, like they're all asking questions, right? And you kind of, especially if it's a story where you see this group of reporters more than once, you kind of start to get to know the different ones. So they're recognizable, but they serve kind of one voice. That's what I call a chorus of, supporting characters. So today we're going to talk about sidekicks. We're going to dive into sidekick, and I'll show you what I mean by sidekick teams as well. So here's the role of a supporting character in general. Supporting character needs to do these things. So I'm going to show you what a supporting character needs to do, and then I'll show you how beautifully Donkey and Shrek and how similar they are when they do them. So yeah, we are live. If you're here, I'm super happy to have you here. Super glad. I hope you're seeing it. We are going. This is it. I can see your comments. I'll take your questions at the end. So supporting characters, they support the lead. That's obviously they support the lead and or the plot. So they are very instrumental in us getting to know that protagonist, because they will do anything typically for that protagonist. They're very loyal to the protagonist. And they also act as an important element in the story in terms of they are part of the hero's journey. They usually help propel the hero's journey in some way, or they really support that protagonist as they go through. They are, supporting character, right? That's what they are, right? They reveal often the inner struggle of the protagonist in a deeper way. Sometimes it would be weird if a protagonist is saying, boy, I'm sure struggling. This is really awful. I'm really like, some good dialogue I'm writing here. But, if we did that, it would be boring. But if they said to their friend, I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, the supporting character is allowing them to reveal their inner struggle. So that supporting character is very, very important. It's why in all romantic comedies, there's a sidekick, so that the person can lament about the romance. So that sidekick is very important in terms of letting us know more about the protagonist. When you see a film that doesn't have strong supporting characters, you might not recognize that that's what's missing. But if you're not really getting to that protagonist, you're not really bonding with that protagonist. And when you're analyzing screenplays, all my readers out there, when you're analyzing screenplays and you're realizing the protagonist feels sort of shallow, we're not getting to know them, look at the supporting character, because there's a good possibility that that supporting character isn't there. And so the supporting character isn't there to allow the protagonist to reveal their struggle. Really important, right? They provide insight into the main character that other characters wouldn't be able to do. So someone who's a best friend to the protagonist, one, I love they can get into their face, right? Like I love in Runaway Bride, Joan Cusack's character really nails her a little ways through and imitates her even. And it's kind of a little bit cruel because she's been so obnoxious that as her friend, she's like, what are you doing? Like she has a moment of just like, you're hurting people. Do you see how you're hurting people? And that's a good friend, right? That can go say to that character, you know, I don't like this. And it's great because that is a really good supporting character as well, because it's a well-written character that's fun for the actor to play and like has some meat to it. It's not just the sounding board. It's not just like, tell me your woes and problems. Sometimes that does happen in films where the supporting character doesn't really have a moment like that, where they can really show what they're going through in terms of being this protagonist friends. Donkey does it really well. Friends forgive each other. If you weren't so, you know, if you weren't so stubborn, onion boy, blah, 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 like he really lets him have it at one point. And so by being that friend and letting that protagonist have it, we can see insight into main character that we wouldn't normally see, and that other characters might not be able to get out of the protagonist because the protagonist won't be vulnerable with other characters as they will with a sidekick or with that really strong supporting character. So when you have a protagonist, especially if they're a very strong protagonist and other characters are telling them things, often they get defensive as opposed to vulnerable because it's random people saying things. But if it's random people like Donkey, Donkey's a people. If it's someone like Donkey, they're going to hear it more because they have a strong relationship, right? So very important. So the supporting character, the sidekick, can also say things about the main character that the character refuses to say about themselves. Similar kind of thing, right? So the character may refuse to say, I'm struggling or I'm weak or I can't do this. Whereas the character, the sidekick, can say, look, this is a drag. Like you're struggling. I can see that, you know, or the other side where the protagonist might be saying, there's no way I can do it. I just can't do it. And they can't say to themselves, I'm capable of this. And the supporting character comes in and says, what are you talking about? Grab your sword. Let's do this thing. Right. So they can be both sides of that for the protagonist. Also very important. And they also can serve as literally the conscience of the protagonist. We literally have Jiminy Cricket here, who is the conscience of Pinocchio. They can literally say, like, are you sure? Sometimes it's even a trope of like the person on the shoulder, Fred Flintstone, right? So it's like they can be that conscience of saying, like, kind of like the example I just gave from Runaway Bride. She's, to some degree, she's being her conscience by saying, this is not okay how you're treating people. And so that's being a good friend. It's being a conscience. It's letting that protagonist know, hey, you've got some work to do here. So they also give information straight out. They're very useful for that. So when you need to know something, the protagonist can say, did you know, blah, 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 like that. I mean, the supporting character can say to the protagonist, did you know that this thing happened? Like sometimes there's things going on in the village or whatever, and the protagonist is so busy fighting the dragon or whatever it might be that they don't know that these other things are happening. So the supporting character can just literally be someone that gives information. When I talked about choruses of supporting characters, that's often their job. Like the reporters are definitely, when you see a reporter in a film, it's basically to give exposition. That reporter is there to say, today this happened, to catch the audience up. So they are where they need to be in order to understand what's happening. So is this making sense so far? I hope it's making sense so far. Definitely, if you're on our YouTube channel, make sure to subscribe. We're going to be doing more of these. We already have hundreds of videos on our channel. So subscribe, ring the bell, make sure that you get notified, all that good stuff. We love doing these. It's so much fun. So also, they represent the theme of the, oh wait, I missed one. Help the audience agree to the hero's journey. So they can say, hey, audience, the supporting character can have a reaction that the audience might be having. So one of the tricks to when you're writing a screenplay and it's very hard to believe that the thing is going down, if you have one character that just says, oh, come on, or I don't believe this, or I can't believe this is happening. That's why you see that in films so much where one character is like, this is never going to work. that person is the audience. That person is to get the audience to go, right? Yeah, I think so too. This is ridiculous. But because the characters are questioning it, it helps the audience go, okay, at least they're questioning it. I'm in. Like that'll help pull that audience through the journey because the characters are also questioning what to do, right? So the supporting character can be the audience's eye in that regard. There's certain actors that do this really well too as well. They do it well as well. And one of those people, and I talk about him all the time in this regard, is Adam Sandler. He's really good at, even when he is the protagonist in the story, he always kind of has the audience's back in a way. He's always like, he and Michael Keaton are the just quintessential double takers where they go like, what, they do a little double take when someone says something. And when someone double takes, that in a way is saying it's a little wink to the audience, like, I'm not seeing this. Are you seeing this? And that little subtle thing is so good because it pulls the audience into rooting for you because you're questioning your own, what you're doing. When the protagonist is questioning their own, what they're seeing, and just with a little bit of a double take where they just really watch. Michael Keaton does a beautiful double take when he's sitting on the bench in The Founder, and he's sitting down and someone picks up their food to go. And this was not a thing at the time at McDonald's. And they sit down on the bench and they start eating it. And he literally goes and he looks at the thing like, wait, they're just going to sit out here and eat it because that's not a thing yet. And so that double take speaks volumes, right? Like, wow, that's actually working. We really have something here. And that propels him forward in a huge way. So when you have that little double take moment, that is bringing the audience into your world. And now that I've said that to you, you'll see it everywhere. And supporting characters do that a lot where they're like, what? They're questioning. And so they're allowing the audience some breathing room to believe what's happening in the story. They also often represent the theme of the story. When there's themes, obviously, of friendship, when there's themes of love, when there's themes of, all the things that connect people, they are very much in the center of that often. Sometimes they will also connect themes of greed, or, when there's themes in the movie that the storyteller is trying to get across, these protagonists is usually being kind of tussled about by the theme to some degree, whereas the supporting characters are living the theme a little more from a true place. They really believe the thing that is the theme. They really are, like, they're really motivated by that thing, whereas the protagonist is questioning it a bit. So the supporting characters can really lean into the theme of a film, and it really helps kind of the overall weight of the movie, and it helps it have some depth. It helps it really lay out what all the different themes are if it's done well. And I'm going to show you the example with Shrek and Donkey. With Donkey and Morpheus in a moment. They also act as a sounding board for what the hero says, what the hero does, and what other people say about the hero. So when you're creating a protagonist or you're creating a character in general, the three things that make up a character is what the character says, what the character does, and what other people say about that character. So that's those are the main ways that we know who is this character and what is their makeup. The things they say things, and we make judgments based on what they say. The things they do, which often are in conflict with the things they say, just like in life. The things we say are often in conflict with the things that we do. I swear I'll clean the house, whatever it might be, right? So that's very common. That makes an authentic character. When they're doing something other than what they're saying, then they're more realistic because of that. So those are two of the ways. And then what other people say about them. Have you noticed? Same in life as well. When other people says, oh, that person is just so amazing and nice and beautiful and lovely, you're like, oh, I can't wait to meet them. And if they say, oh, that person is really mean and awful and an ogre, then you're like, maybe not. So it's like we make judgments, choices, decisions based on these things. So again, it's kind of odd, or it would be awkward if the protagonist was saying things about themselves, trying to get all that through the protagonist. By having this sort of sounding board creature, person, thing, whatever it might be, that is the supporting sidekick, all of those things can be a sounding board and bounce right off. the hero is talking to the sidekick, and so they're getting the things out that way. The hero is doing things with and or to the sidekick, so we're seeing their actions because of the relationship with the sidekick. And other people are talking. The princess reveals herself to Donkey. So people reveal themselves to the sidekick. They'll question the protagonist to the sidekick, where they won't question the protagonist to their face. Often, very common. We have the beautiful scene in Jerry Maguire where Renee Zellweger is talking to her sister and saying the awesome Cameron Crowe lines, I love him for the man. I'm in love with him. I love him for the man he almost is. That scene is so great. And so she's revealing to us and to her sister, and then he ends up standing there, like he ends up overhearing some of it, right? So it makes a really great moment where it's a sounding board in many different ways, because she also bounces it off her sister. They realize he can hear it, and so it becomes a whole different thing, right? And so that it's a beautiful moment for the protagonist, Jerry Maguire, and it's a lovely moment between the two supporting characters for sure. They provide humor, clearly, all the time. They are very much about that. Sometimes it would be awkward for the protagonist to be having a humorous moment when they're very deep inside their journey, where they're trying to figure things out. They can have humor for sure, but often it gets thrown to the side character for sure. And then again, they provide the audience's perspective all the way through, not just in those double take moments, but they are constantly, when you are looking at, if you feel like there's no connection happening in a screenplay when you're analyzing it, often this is where to look, is to look at the supporting characters, see if the audience's perspective is represented in that. Are they having a voice for what the disbelief might be from the audience, and what is the audience wanting to get out of it? And sometimes that is satisfied by the supporting characters. And then they also wrap up the story. And they do that often by eliciting emotion from the audience. So again, the supporting character is really representing that audience's journey. And so they're often responsible for eliciting emotion. They're the ones that sometimes it can be emotion and humor in one. You see this in like, how often, this is a very common thing. I haven't seen it for a while, but it was a really big thing that people did for a long time, where something very public is happening and they show all these different people watching it in their different areas. It's a way to wrap up the story, where the person, they did it in Queen's Gambit, where she's going to win the chess game, and we see everyone's reaction from watching her win this chess game from all these different places. That's a very common thing. Tootsie does it beautifully. When he does the big reveal, we get to see Bill Murray's reaction, we get to see Terry Garr's reaction, we get to see Charles Durning's reaction, and it's so fun, right, to go from one character to the next of how they're going to take in the reaction, which builds and builds and builds to Jessica Lange walking up and slapping him. So good, right? It builds the emotion. So those supporting characters, gives me the chills. Those supporting characters are really helping to build and pull the audience in and bring more emotion. So the audience is feeling more and more and more. And you do it in an order where it's like more and more significant characters find out the truth, and then the most significant character finds out the truth. And so, reacts to the truth, I should say. So that's how they elicit emotion, that's how they build, and that's how they wrap up a story. So that can really be helpful with the supporting characters helping the hero do that, right? So that's some of the ways that a supporting character will support that protagonist, a sidekick. So Patrick is another beautiful sidekick. So let me go through Donkey and Morpheus, and then we'll talk about other really lovely sidekick characters. Patrick is also one of my favorites. He's so devoted wholeheartedly to everything, every adventure that SpongeBob says he wants to do. Patrick's like, I'm in. I don't care how ridiculous it is. I'm your guy. And it's so beautiful, and it's such a great friendship. And so having that person, it's kind of like the concept of the first follower. So there's a concept that, people think that people who become famous or invent something or whatever, that they're the ones that are so very important. But really, that first follower is also extremely important. The one person that validates it, right? That says, yes, I'm going to do this. And when one person can kind of go in and get behind that idea or that moment or that whatever it might be, then pretty soon maybe another person will, and another person. There's a really great TED talk about this where someone is dancing alone on a beach, and then someone like starts to dance with them. And so they're the first follower, very important. And pretty soon other people start to dance. And pretty soon you're odd if you're not dancing, right? And that's how trends happen. That's how movement happens. That first follower is very important. And so that degree of loyalty and adventure and courage, it's super courageous to step up and support the person that might seem crazy, because the crazy person could stay crazy if you don't do that. But the crazy person might have the keys to the kingdom. The crazy person might be, Steve Jobs. And so it might be someone that's going to do something spectacular. But if no one steps up and says, I got you, then that thing might not ever happen, because they need that follower, right? So that's why it's so important to write these fantastic supporting characters, so that protagonist can ease into the journey, can have their ups and downs, and that supporting character is really paving the way. Like I think I really love supporting characters. It's really interesting too when you look at, like, for example, in Rain Man, Dustin Hoffman won the Best Actor for that, correct? Correct me if I'm wrong here. But I believe he did, because I remember being like, wait, what? To me, he's a supporting character. It's Jerry Maguire. I'm Jerry Maguire. It's Tom Cruise. It's Raymond's story. It's his, it's his story of helping his brother. He couldn't have that story if it weren't for the supporting character. Definitely, he drives the plot. He drives it. But I think because of just the type of character it was, it got a lot of attention. Whereas his story, Tom Cruise's beautiful performance in Rain Man, wouldn't have been possible without that supporting character, so much so that people see that supporting character as the leading character. You look at Whiplash, and J.K. Simmons won an Oscar for his portrayal in Whiplash as a supporting character, but the main character's journey would have been nothing without that supporting character. If he hadn't had that supporting character causing so much havoc, there wouldn't have been a conflict. That supporting character was key. And typically when you see a supporting character that wins an Oscar, one, they're played really well. They're obviously brilliant actors, but also the reason they're able to be so brilliant is because that character becomes so very important. It's just, it has to be there in order for the story to take place, right? So let's talk about Donkey and Morpheus. Should have put them side by side, actually. So Donkey and Morpheus, they both lead the road trip. Donkey's like, I'm in, let's go. He starts singing. He's like, let's do this. Donkey is like, Shrek wants to get the job done, but Donkey's like, no, we're doing this thing. It's going to be really fun. And he creates an adventure out of it. Morpheus is like, he comes to find him. It's like, follow the white rabbit. He comes into the office. You got to go. This is it. We're getting you out. Like, he's like, I'm coming to get you, kind of thing. So they both are kind of starting the story, like moving that story forward, right? Donkey tells Shrek what's happening. He tells him about the fairy tale creature. He's like always explaining and telling him kind of what he needs to know. He's explaining what happens later when the princess falls in love with him. He's the one just like, oh my gosh, maybe if you just talk to her, kind of thing. He's like constantly explaining all the way along the way. And this same Morpheus literally trains Neo, right? Literally takes him through the steps and trains him and like gives him all the tools that he needs. They also are responsible for bringing in other characters a lot of the times. So Donkey brings in Dragon. Now, Dragon is a side character, but then because of the relationship, which is so surprising and so beautifully brilliant, you're a girl, Dragon, one of my favorite moments. And so by bringing Dragon in, how important does that become later? By having Dragon come in and Donkey developing a relationship with Dragon. And they do it beautifully in that they don't go down a whole path of Donkey's going to go back and talk to Dragon. We have one little glimpse of them at the river during a montage of music where Donkey sees Dragon and she's all sad by the lake. And that's all we see. And then later he whistles because he's clearly made this, we have a moment where we see them come together. A lot of lesser writers would have written a whole thing right there. And I don't know, maybe they did and cut it, but they would have had a whole scene about that. We didn't need it. All we needed was to see them connect. She already had a crush on him. So it was like, beautiful to see them connect. And then she's like, so very important the way she comes back. They literally write her. She literally eats the villain. So if it weren't for Donkey connecting to Dragon and bringing Dragon back into the story, Who would have eaten the villain? Maybe Shrek. I don't know. Donkey also does the whole onion boy speech with Shrek. And by doing the onion boy speech, onions have layers, like really kind of bringing that to light, it helps us see how vulnerable Shrek actually is, even though he's an ogre, which then makes us believe that the princess will fall in love with him. If we didn't see that side to him, it wouldn't have the connection that it does because of it, right? So Morpheus, on the other hand, he brings in the crew, right? He brings in the crew, he brings in Trinity. So they meet because of Trinity, because of Morpheus bringing everything again, not only everything together, and not only that, he introduces Neo to the Oracle, which is so spectacular, right? That's the whole point, right? And even when she says, "You're not the one," Morpheus is like, "You're the one." I mean, Neo doesn't tell Morpheus that she said that, but it wouldn't have mattered. Morpheus is so committed to Neo that he's willing to die for him. Donkey is so committed, he will not leave. Even though Shrek is terrible to him, he comes back and he's like, "I'm going to take my half of the swamp." He just won't leave it. He won't leave it alone. And then he yells at him, "Friends forgive each other." It's such a great loyalty, great. He's just such a great friend. And the same is true with Morpheus being such a good friend, not just a friend, but just, he's a sage. He's everything to Neo. And so much so that he forces the point of no return. Just like Donkey has such a good relationship with the point of no return, right? Shrek realizes because of Donkey driving him, Shrek realizes we need to rescue her. And he wouldn't have had that. He would have sat in his swamp and lived alone forever. And she would have married Farquaad and everybody would have lived unhappily ever after. But because of Donkey going like, "No, we have to, get in there." And he inspires Shrek to go. And then he brings the dragon in for the point of no return. So he drives that point of no return. Morpheus literally drives the point of no return by needing to be rescued. So because of that, now Neo needs to show his commitment to Morpheus and that he is willing to die for him. And that is indeed what makes him the one. And then both of them resolve with true love's first kiss. Trinity kisses Neo. Shrek and Fiona have a beautiful kiss. True love's first kiss helps like wrap those two stories up. And so as you can see, like one of the reasons why these two films are so similar is because of Morpheus and Donkey and their commitment to Shrek and Neo. It's just beautiful. They're both beautiful movies. And so we break this down in a big way inside of the story event, which we've now turned into a course. So if you want access to that, you can have access to that, and you can see all the ways that they come together. And by doing that now that you have an understanding of how Morpheus and Neo like really make sense and really fit together in terms of being a great supporting character, let's look at a few other supporting characters and see what we're talking about. These are some of the ones that I pulled out as being some of the best that I absolutely love. Obviously, Morpheus, Donkey, I mentioned Patrick already, SpongeBob. He's just so willing to be down for the ride, and he's so very, very loyal. And then Jesse Pinkman in Breaking Bad. He's an amazing supportive character. He's the conscience of the film, like we talked about that. He's definitely the conscience. He's constantly overwrought with all of the dilemmas that he has about what they're doing. He's such a great soundboard. He's a sage in some ways. He gives advice, even though he's a hot mess. He's still he is a really good soundboard. He very much tells Walter White when he's off, very, not being nice or whatever. Walter White is not very nice. So he's definitely a sounding board for all of that, right? He's caught in the middle all the time. Ed in Shaun of the Dead, he's a really great, super supportive best friend throughout the whole movie. Ted in Ted, it actually is Mark Wahlberg's story, but Ted is the sidekick. And in the first film, later they switch it around a bit, but he's an amazing sidekick, right? Baby Yoda, when you look at him carrying that thing, carrying baby Yoda around, like how much humor Baby Yoda brings, the themes that Baby Yoda brings, the whole thing is revolving around this supporting character being rescued. And so like all of the different themes that Baby Yoda causes the Mandalorian to have to deal with, right? Hitler and Jojo Rabbit, beautiful, beautiful supporting character. Like really getting, if you haven't seen Jojo Rabbit, it's a beautiful study in so many different ways. And so but because he's written Hitler from the perspective of this child, it's such a beautiful combination of him being Hitler, but also being this boy's insecurities, all the things, that the boy needs, this supporting character is providing. And then you have Elizabeth and Will combined would be a sidekick inside of Pirates of the Caribbean in the first one. So we think that it might be their story. It starts out with them, but then obviously we're introduced to Jack Sparrow, which the beautiful thing about that story, again, written by readers, is that it's taking what would normally be the villain and making us love him so much that he's not the villain anymore. He's the protagonist. And then the villain becomes, the other pirates that are chasing after him. So by having Will and Elizabeth, having the love story, having them like trying to save each other, all of that helps drive the story forward, just like a good supporting character will do. And then you have Peck Lynn and Crazy Rich Asians. She's such a good friend. She's very much, the whole family would be like a chorus, right? The whole family is supporting her in her journey. When she gets dumped, she goes there, which is very common in romantic comedy, where the person gets dumped and then goes to their best friend. But she's a great character in and of herself. And often they're really fun characters. Supporting characters in romantic comedies are some of my favorites because they're often just outrageous. Notting Hill, he's so great in Notting Hill. And so there's just so many great ways. All of the supporting characters in Notting Hill are fantastic on both sides of the relationships. Excuse me. And then one of the best sidekicks is Toto. So all four are sidekicks, the Scarecrow, Tin Man, Lion. But Toto, without Toto, there'd be no story. Toto causes the problem in the beginning. Toto runs away, which makes Dorothy go chase after Toto. And then she's not in the cellar when the tornado happens because she's out trying to get Toto. She's going to run away with Toto, right? She also, in the very end, is supposed to get in the balloon with the wizard, and Toto runs off. So if it weren't for Toto causing havoc, story wouldn't happen. Like Dorothy would go nowhere. So there's also sidekick teams. And when you think about romantic comedies have this, I just kind of gave a couple of examples. They have teams, which is friends, families, co-workers, fellow soldiers, fellow teammates, fellow competitors, sports stories where you get to know all of the competitors on a team. They all kind of make up a sidekick team. And so when you look at Harry Met Sally and you've got Bruno Kirby and Carrie Fisher as Marie and Jess, really important, because if they had gone the way it was supposed to go, they would never have ended up together. But because they go on a double date and then the double date ends up getting together, it's so brilliant, right? So Han Solo, Chewbacca are a team supporting character together. 5-Year Engagement, Alex and Susie, which is Alison Brie and Chris Pratt, some of the best supporting characters. That movie has some flaws, but I really love these two supporting characters because they literally have the life that we thought that the main character is going to have. They get engaged. It starts with them getting engaged, and we think we're going to go through their life being engaged, but instead their engagement goes awry. And what happens is that the engagement party, his best friend and her sister, I believe, they hook up. And so then they end up getting married. They end up having the family. He ends up literally taking the protagonist's job. And so they're down here having the life that the other two thought they were making. Is so brilliant. And then you've got, a crew like the Toys and Toy Story. Star Trek has the whole Enterprise crew. We know who each person is very well. Godfather, we know all the mobsters. We know who each person is, right? So they're all supporting characters, but they make up a team that represent a certain thing. So they represent, the mobsters represent all of the drama, all of the themes of family, all of that, themes of loyalty. And then again, Wizard of Oz has the Lion, Scarecrow, Tin Man, as well as Toto kicking in there. So what are some of your favorites? I'd love to see what some of your favorites are, and what resonates with you as you look at this, with all of these, traits that a supporting character has. This is one of the greatest ways that you can analyze a screenplay in general. So if you're writing a screenplay, really take a look at your supporting characters. And if you're reading a screenplay and you're seeing that there's something missing and you can't quite put your finger on it, this is usually one of the best places to look, is what's going on with those supporting characters. Go back through. So list some of your favorites. I have a little exercise for you to list some of your favorites, and then go back through this list up here of the things that they do, all of these things up here, go back through these lists and ask yourself, are they giving information? Are they helping the audience agree to the hero's journey? Are they representing themes? Are they acting as a sounding board? Are we getting to see what the hero thinks, does, says, all of those things from the supporting character? Are they providing any humor? Are they providing any emotion? What are they doing, and are they doing it well? So you can go back through once you have your list of the ones that you love, and you can study them to see, like, is it working? And then if you're analyzing screenplay, you can check to see if the supporting characters are fitting the bill, right? If they're doing the things that they're supposed to do. Morgan Freeman's character in Unforgiven, another great one. I love seeing the ones that you guys pick. Elwood the Penguin, Mother Superior, and John Candy from the Blues Brothers. Yeah, so that's a little bit of a crew, right? Or a team or a chorus. The Fabelmans, the camera is a sidekick that provides reaction shots revealing the mother's love for Benny, etc., for the young filmmaker. Yeah, really good example. Sometimes a camera can be that in some degree. In Fleabag, the camera is that as well. The camera is the audience, but the camera is also a device to show the, all the things we talked about, right? The camera in Fleabag is showing her dilemmas. It's her sounding board. It's acting as that thing. And then in Fleabag, the beautiful thing they do there is she starts getting confused as she starts to fall in love with the hot priest. He's so great. As she starts to fall in love with Andrew Scott, she starts getting confused, and he's the first character that sees, like, what are you doing? Like, he calls her out on talking to the camera, which is so beautiful. You haven't seen that. It's really a great study in writing and in, using that device in a brand new way. Like, I don't think I've ever seen where someone else calls someone else out for talking to the camera. Really, really brilliant. And so by doing that, she gets obviously totally thrown that he sees that she's doing it, which makes her love him even more, which then she starts to get confused and she starts saying things to the camera that she should be saying to him, and saying things to him she should be saying to the camera. And it's just really brilliant. So using that device, using that camera, really, really great point. Martin, using that camera is really, really smart. Joan Cusack as Cynthia in Working Girls. She's outrageous, goes along with so much, really wants Tess to rise up, is the whole thing. Joan Cusack is just one of the greatest supporting actors, right? She's been in so many things. She's amazing in broadcast news when she says, aside from Socially, you're my role model. Like, she's so solid. She's so quirky on her own, and yet she's very, very believable. She's lovely and Say Anything as John Cusack's sister. Go figure. She's and really great in Working Girl for sure. Commissioner Gordon in Dark Knight. Yeah. And sometimes in movies like, in the action movies or the comic book movies, again, you'll have a crew of sidekicks with Commissioner Gordon, although Commissioner Gordon stands on his own for sure. I know you'd say, well, Joan Cusack in every movie, right? She's just fantastic and so solid. And then she kind of steps it up with, can't think of the name of it right now, where Kevin Kline, where she's going to marry Kevin Kline. And that's actually, no, she would be a supporting character because it's not a romantic comedy. It's definitely his story where he comes out and she's his fiance. Yeah, love it. So you guys are coming up with some really good Bad Boys 1 and 2. Well, who are you referring to in Bad Boys? So yeah, so as you can see, hey, Jordan, email us at team@hollywoodgatekeepers.com and we'll let you know about the screenreader program. So this particular sidekick presentation is not inside of the program. We might drop it in there, but we do cover all of these things inside of the character section. If you've gotten that far, I think, Rick. So it should be in there. It's just not laid out just specifically for, we do a section on sidekicks, but I might add it in there. Because it just really is like going through it and really bringing home, like, every time I do these exercises and we do something and you really focus in like this, I realize like how deep you can go with every element of so many things about writing, which is why, as a reader, for all my readers out there, you can specialize in sidekicks. Like, you could be someone that looks at someone's screenplay with your knowledge of screenplay analysis, and you can say, I specialize in making sure your supporting characters are fitting the bill, are doing the work they're supposed to do. That's your main thing that you focus on. And you can do it with villains. There's so many ways that you can break down and analyze a screenplay. There's so many elements that go into it that you can go deep into a rabbit hole with so many different things. which is really fun to me. These are fun rabbit holes, ones I want to hang out with. So I hope that all makes sense. We do have, so like I said, we did a full day live event where we dove into Shrek and the Matrix and we walked through every single element of story. And so we did it with Shrek and the Matrix. And then we also did it with a couple of other films as well. So once you see it though, now that you see the how Shrek and the Matrix are the same, and now that we've given you a couple of other examples, you can't unsee it. Now, when you go watch another movie, you'll start to see like the sidekicks and the supporting characters are going to start jumping out at you in terms of how much they actually drive the story. They really do. And so, and how important they are for that protagonist. They really are so very important. So, and we do now have, we took that event, we created a course out of it. So we do have that. I'm going to give you a link, and on this page, you can download this handout. So you can just look at the page and download the handout. First I have to type it up. So you can look at this page and you can download the handout, and then you can also just see what that event is, or not event, it's a course now. It used to be an event. You can take a look if it's something that you're interested in, but definitely download it. There you go. You can definitely download it and get your free handout. And then I would use this handout to look at other, other characters and make sure that they're fitting the bill. Does that make sense? Val Kilmer, really good example, Rick. Val Kilmer as Doc Holliday in Tombstone. Such a great performance. So good. So very good. The lawyer in True Grit, he was fabulous. Brought the comedy, but also helped show the girl's shrewdness and smarts. Yeah, so great, right? So so now you're thinking, I can see you guys thinking and starting to pull people out, not just for sometimes, well, a couple of things. It's like, not just for like, oh, this, Val Kilmer's performance was amazing. And sometimes we think that it's the actor. We pull the actor out and we go, oh, they're just so great. But when you look at Dustin Hoffman and how this thing was written in Rain Man, like you start to see, oh, how important the writing is. That it isn't just that they're playing this amazing character. It's that it's written in a way that is so very important. And so and then when you combine it, when you have a Val Kilmer doing one of his best performances, whew, like when you get that, oh, it gives me a chills again. When you get that combo, that's when it's really amazing. So I hope this is helpful. Dive on in, look at your screenplays, watch your movies. Who are your favorite supporting characters? I would watch this again, go back and look at it, really, really like take it to heart and really see how much supporting characters will define, the success of a film, the success of a screenplay, how you can get that script up onto the screen because you've written these amazing supporting characters. So use that for your screenplays, use that for your analysis. Check out and download your handout so you have it. If you want to go and do this in great detail in terms of going through Shrek and the Matrix and all the story elements, you can dive into that course if you want to. And yeah, keep on keeping on. We'll keep doing this. Yeah. Thank you guys. Thanks for showing up. This has been really, really fun. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.